What is going on, everyone? This is Torch contributor Frank Peteani back with another episode of Pro Wrestling Then and Now here on the PWTorch YouTube channel. And today we are looking back at the Royal Rumble pay-per-view of 1995 in the World Wrestling Federation. And of course, I can't do it alone. I am doing it with the gentleman that will be joining me throughout the year for WWF events and pay-per-views and shows and things of that nature. Longtime Torch contributor, John Mezzera. John, how are you today, my friend?
I am doing well, Frank. Thank you for having me. And we've done a few of these in 94 that are a little still in the back of my mind from Survivor Series most recently. And looking forward to this journey. Looking forward to, it might be strong of a term considering the quality of 1995 WWF programming, but looking forward to it nonetheless. It'll be fun to take this journey through all these WWF pay-per-views.
Yeah, and I had some thoughts as I watched the show, and we're not going to bring it all up today because I want to see the year and I kind of want to see things shake out. But it's amazing how presentation can really make a difference. You could have all the stars in the world and just have a product that just doesn't work. And I think 1995 is an example that just doesn't work for a lot of people. But then, in a couple of years, 1997, 1998, the talent roster it might even be thinner than what it was here. And WWF is doing well. It's the Attitude Era. So it really just comes down to presentation and how things are done. So we'll look forward to talking about that. Let me get a couple of housekeeping items out of the way before we get rolling here, John. Hope everybody had a chance to listen to the last episode of the show. It was the Royal Rumble 1990 look back, so a 35-year look back. Sean Rannigan joined me for that. We kind of split that up. We pre-recorded it for VIP members, and then I posted it a few days later on YouTube. Long story behind that. Not even going to go into it, but nevertheless, that is available for your listening, both for VIP members and YouTube viewers. And by the way, I want to thank everybody listening to this afterwards on the VIP side. This is not just on YouTube, but it is available as an audio podcast on the Torch VIP network. As far as what's going on in February, I'm kind of still working on that. I'm pretty certain I'm going to be doing WCW Super Brawl 5. So just kind of staying with the 95 look back and looking at both promotions as we head towards the Monday Night Wars, just to see how things were going. As far as the other show, February might be one of those months where I only do one. We'll see what happens. I might put it out to a vote. I'm considering some Saturday night's main event reviews, seeing as I did 1 and 2, maybe to keep that train going. We can look back at 3 and 4, or ECW. Might be fun because that's the year that ECW really starts to pick up. Todd Martin is going to join me in a couple of months to look back at Hostile City Showdown from 1995. So maybe to get kind of in the mood for that, watch some of the ECW programming in advance of that show. Real quick, a personal shout out I want to give to a friend of mine, nothing to do with wrestling. His name is Rich Limegruber. He just started a podcast called Enrich Your Life. He's a financial advisor. He's been in the business for 25 years. I've known him that long. I met him through some close friends of mine. And, he talks about what a financial advisor does, what he or she could do for you as far as your retirement, kids' college, money you want to have currently and later in life, all kinds of things. Real sharp guy, real nice guy too. It's called Enrich Your Life. Basically Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. I don't get anything for plugging that. That's just a friend helping a friend. So if that's your thing, go ahead and check that out. All right, John, let's jump into 1995. Before we get into the pay-per-view, I just kind of real quick, you alluded to doing 94 earlier, and you did. We did a number of shows from that year. I just kind of want to write the epitaph for 94 and kind of I guess go back in time, what you remember about maybe what your expectations were for 1995, what you were looking forward to, and just in general, what the WWF had to offer in '94, good, bad, or different. Overall thoughts.
Yeah. So I think 94 was just kind of a weird year
Yeah,
where there were some positives, right? I think the rise of Diesel
yeah,
going from, I mean, they mention it on this show, how he won all three titles in that calendar year and had never been done
absolutely.
before. And Shawn Michaels continuing to grow from, where he had been the Rockers, then the Intercontinental Champion, early Heartbreak Kid years, to being more of a potential main event world champion. He hadn't won the world title yet, right? So,
Correct.
um, he's in that movement, and those two obviously parallel each other, go together. Um, and we talked about the King of Hearts. Owen Hart had a lot of great moments. There were those positives. At the same time, we talked at the King of the Ring, uh, how like Lex Luger wasn't even booked on the King of the Ring, and some of the issues with Survivor Series where they weren't necessarily using their talent as best they could, and the talent was not as deep as it could have been either. So you
Correct.
had these kind of ups and downs, positives and negatives, I think, moving into the new year, and that would probably be a theme as
Yeah.
we move through 95, where you get um and I kind of looked into this a little bit. I was curious, with the opening match when we get to it, the Intercontinental title change. This was also a time period when title changes started to become more frequent, and the Intercontinental, not the world title yet, that would come a few years
Hmm.
later, but the Intercontinental title, the tag titles, seemed to be much less stable at this time. And I looked it up. I don't remember now off the top of my head, but I kind of counted the number of title changes in like 91, 92, 93, 90, and 95, 93, 94, 95 was a big jump up if I remember correctly. And we have this Intercontinental title change and new tag champions on this show, which kind of starts that trend, or not starts it, but at least, continues the trend that had already previously started, and maybe lead to, in a couple years, where you suddenly are getting the world title, which had been the stable one
Yep.
for so long. All of a sudden, the world title is hot potatoing by, 98, 99. We're a few years away, but
Yep.
the trend was there for the secondary title. So I think that's an interesting thing to look at going forward.
The Intercontinental title, if you count it being vacated, right? So it was vacated in April. I'm on Wikipedia right now, so I have to quote my source. It was vacated from Jeff Jarrett, and it just went right back to Jeff Jarrett. So,
Yeah,
we're starting that. I mean, if we count all of that, it was vacated, or the title was changed 8 times
there you
in
go.
1995.
Yeah,
But that's a big deal, to your point, because in '94, and let me do this from memory here, we start the year with Razor, right? Then it goes to Diesel, then it goes back to Razor, and that's it.
that's it. Yeah.
That's it.
And the IC title always changed hands more frequently. It's not like,
Right.
right. I mean, because you'd have Hogan holding the title for 4.5 years or whatever, and you'd
Correct.
have, you know, one or two title changes for the IC title. But to go from a couple changes to 8, that's a huge jump.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah,
And then if you want to talk crazy, 1999, when everybody talks about the Attitude Era being so great, it ain't that great, but that's another conversation for another day. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
I think
6,
it's 11.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Yeah.
Bingo.
That's the
Bingo.
one I always remember because it was almost one a month. It felt just shy of of averaging one title change a month. Yeah.
And longtime Torch contributor John Mezzera. Guess who wins it 3 of those 11 times?
Well, Triple H, right?
Nope, Jeff Jarrett.
Oh,
Remember, Jarrett's in the promotion in 99. He's back in 97. He's there for 2 years.
Yeah.
He does the Good Housekeeping match, I think, with China, and then he's gone and jumps
Yeah.
over. But hold on, let me see. Triple H, because I think by
this
99,
time he's the world title.
Right.
Yeah.
Remember, he's heel. They turn him at WrestleMania, and he moves to the world title picture. He doesn't touch the IC title.
Right. Yeah. That's later than him. Yeah.
Yeah. But one of your IC champs is China in 99.
Yeah.
That's when
was
they started.
Eddie Guerrero in there?
That was the Good Housekeeping match where she beat Jarrett.
Yeah.
And that's what Jarrett said, see ya.
Yeah.
You know, so Edge was an IC title in 99. Let's see. I'll just run through them here. Then we'll get to the show. Val Venus, Road Dogg, Goldust, Godfather, Jarrett, Edge, back to Jarrett, D'Lo, back to Jarrett, China, and then Chris Jericho at Armageddon.
Okay. Yeah.
It'll probably be, and at this point, from this point moving forward, it's garbage. It's nothing.
It's garbage, and it's Jericho every other one. And Jericho, if anybody provided any stability in the next few years with that title, it was likely to be Jericho.
Yeah,
because he was kind of in that level. But
and you know what the sad thing is, and we digress a bit here. That whole run is probably better than like the early 2010s when it was Kofi Kingston or it was Dolph Ziggler or it was John Morrison or it was Drew when he wasn't the star he is. So it's just to show you where that
until you get to Gunther.
Until we get to Gunther, and then now we're kind of like now we're back to like it meaning something.
That's the now portion of the then and now.
That's there you go. Pro Wrestling Then and Now, folks. We covered a little bit of now, so there you go. All right. I'm with you. There was a lot of good. It's the same thing that we're going to see in 95. There's a lot of good and there's a lot of just really bad. And this show generally gets reviewed very well. I mean, there's a lot of 6s, there's 7s. Bruce Mitchell had it at a 7.5. You know, there were a lot of good vibes on this pay-per-view, but I mean, the Royal Rumble, my God. I mean, woof. Boy, are we going to talk about that. And I'm glad you brought up Lex Luger because he's going to be a little bit of a topic later. As far as I have 3 stars to me that got wasted in 95, and Lex Luger is definitely one of them. So we'll get to that. All right. Let's get to the show proper here. This took place on January 22nd, 1995. So we were a little over the 30-year anniversary. This took place in the USF Sundome in Tampa, Florida, which is now called the Yuengling Center. John, do you know the significance of the Yuengling Center in Tampa, Florida?
No, I do not. Oh, I have to remember to talk. It's
2021.
Say again? Oh, was that the Thunderdome? What
the final home of the Thunderdome. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
They started in Orlando. I think they were in the Amway Arena. I can't remember exactly. And then when that ran out, then they moved to the Thunderdome in April of 21 until they stopped with the Thunderdome. Yeah.
I mean, it's not good times, but not necessarily for WWE reasons.
No.
They didn't handle it. And I mean, handle it. Good God, let's not. It's such a horrible time and a crazy time that what AEW was able to do with the Daily's Place was just so much better.
Yes.
Than what WWE was able to do. But I'm not going to fault them too much. I mean, what could you do? The screens and the ambient noise at least provided some kind of environment that you didn't have at the Performance Center in those first few months or whatever it was. You know, I was on with Greg on Wrestling Night in America. I think it was the first week. Of the empty arena. I mean, it was the first or second, and we talked about it at the time, and I said, couldn't they safely have, developmental talent at least spread out around, you have a few in the first row, just to create kind of what AEW did with Daily's Place, because I said, and regulations, whatever, and safety was the most important thing and everything. So I get it. But at the time, I just remember having that conversation with Greg, and we were also like, Well, this is going to be a few months and then we'll be back to normal.
Yeah,
Not so much. But
not so
anyways,
much.
I digress. This is
Yeah,
it's a part of history and it's, not something we can just unfortunately forget about.
it'll be a little while before I even consider that for then and now. That could stay then. We don't have to
That's
talk about it now.
100%.
Yeah. Um, on this show, John, 10,000 attended according to Wikipedia, 225,000 pay-per-view buys. Your announcers are Vince McMahon and Jerry the King Lawler. Your interviewers, Todd Pettengill, Ray Rougeau, and Stephanie Wyand. I had completely forgot about her. I don't even remember her, to be
I
honest with you.
saw her and Allison was watching a little bit of it with me and I was just like, I have very vague recollection. If you had given me a name and you had shown me a picture and said, "Who is this?" I have no clue. And then if you said 1995 WWF, I would have been like, okay. So
Yeah,
again, very, very vague recollection of her. But no, if I had spent months trying to name all the backstage interviewers in WWFE history, I would have never come up with her.
to
So
me, it ended with Gene Okerlund. I mean, Pettengill was okay.
he was
Cole,
memorable though. At
yeah,
least you're going to remember him if you're coming up with a list, because he
yeah.
was kind of over the top.
And the backstage interviewer, just the value of it just went completely down. I mean, I think they try now to give some value to it. I mean, you go back about 5, 6, 7 years to Renee when she was doing it. She was very good.
Mhm.
I think Byron Saxton does a decent job now, but it's not, yeah. Old guys
Uh,
yelling at clouds here, whether it's Gene or I can't think of like the AWA names, like Lee Marshall or Wade's probably yelling at me. Look it up, look it up. But
well, that's how Bischoff got his start
Bischoff,
in
Ken
front of the
Resnick,
camera.
That's the name. Ken Resnick and AWA. It was just it was just a different it was a different time. But
Yeah.
we digress. And of course Howard Finkel is your ring announcer. Your dark match. Talk about people I don't remember. Buck Quartermain. Um, do not remember him at all. Defeats the Brooklyn Brawler. And the only thing I could say about that is seems like the Brooklyn Brawler is in every dark match on pay-per-view. So, which is fine. It's where he belongs.
Yeah.
Um, your opening, you talk about not aging well. Pamela Anderson arrives in a limo, and this is my notes. All the horny WWF wrestlers are there to greet her and try and get some.
Yep. Pretty much. And we'd have the King making comments throughout the night about having a big date with her.
Although Vince, I have to say, when she comes out later, Vince does have one good line, so I'll give credit where it's due. We'll talk about that line later. Yeah, this definitely doesn't fly today. And in fact, in Wade's newsletter, he goes something along the lines of, "Yeah, all these guys are standing around like construction workers whistling, thinking it's going to turn Pamela Anderson on." So they hype the pay-per-view. They talk about Bret and Diesel, talk about some of the other matches. And they do bring up the fact that it's between two of the more popular stars. And that's an interesting note that it's Bret against Diesel. Diesel recently turned babyface. And we'll talk about something when we get to that match. But for now, let's talk about the Intercontinental Championship we alluded to a little while ago. Razor Ramon defending 30 years ago, folks, against somebody who currently wants to contend for the AEW World title. Yes, folks, your friend and mine, Jeff Jarrett, with the roadie, the eventual Road Dogg. So real quickly, just to paint the background of this match, Jarrett had gotten involved in a title match on Raw between Razor Ramon and Owen Hart. Jarrett had been part of the Teamsters. We covered that match, Survivor Series 94. He had been part of the Teamsters that faced Razor Ramon's bad guys. They actually did this match on a house show at MSG in the fall. And Jarrett actually worked Diesel for the WWF Championship. So what they did on the house is they ended up doing on TV. He did lose to Bret Hart. on a Raw taping on January 9th, which is the same night he got involved in the Razor Owen match. And ironically, and I found this to be interesting, there was a house show in California where Razor defended the IC title against Bob Backlund.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
How about that?
Yeah.
Right in your neck of the woods there, John.
Yeah.
Of course, Jerry's got to make it. I found this to be, did you catch this? He made incest remarks about people in Tennessee.
I mean, like, it's not surprising. I didn't catch it, but you know.
I'm thinking Jarrett's the heel. Like, why is he, you know what I mean? Like,
he's got his, well, I mean, it's not like, you know, if anyone can make jokes about Tennessee, it's Lawler.
It's Lawler.
He's got that right?
And I guess, you know, Lawler and Jarrett, you know, they got their history. So
they certainly do.
Something we didn't know about. But anyway, this goes a little over 18 minutes. Jarrett wins it to win the IC title. Razor Ramon attempts a Razor's Edge. He can't hold Jarrett. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about why that happened in a second. And Jarrett just rolls up Razor for a small package to win. So this match ended up being restarted because the roadie clipped Razor's knee on the outside. Razor's knee was already compromised via the match with Owen. Jarrett calls him a chicken, calls him a coward if he doesn't come back to the ring. And eventually Razor is goaded back in. They restart the match. It probably goes about 4 minutes after it's restarted. And then Jarrett wins the title. Wade rates it 2.5 stars. Quote, a very well plotted match. Strong because of near falls and drama, but weak in crowd heat, bumps, and overall athleticism, especially early.
That's a fair assessment.
Yeah. You go first on this match. What'd you think?
Yeah, no, I think, it was a pretty good match. I liked the booking of it. You got the focus on the knee from Jarrett, and he was little mini, with all due respect to Charles Robinson, mini nature boy with his blonde hair and his strut and his figure 4 leg lock. So he's doing the figure 4 as his finisher. So it all made sense. The count out at first, and of course, you know, it's been 30 years since I saw this live. So I don't remember, you know, I'm not looking up the results ahead of time. So I was like, count out finish, that's weak. So I like that it's classic heel stuff from Jarrett to goad Razor. Good for Razor. He's the baby face. He should want to defend it. You know, he should want to end it in the ring. So all of that made sense. You give him the out that he had, you know, the injury, and Jarrett gets a pinfall win, which is better than, you know, other kinds of wins. And you got the heel tactics and everything else. So I think the plotting of it was very good. Jarrett throws, you know, some nice drop kicks. At one point, he had Razor in a headlock that I thought to myself, even Randy Orton would be ashamed of this headlock. Like,
yeah,
I expect more from Jarrett on a simple move like that. I mean, it was really light. Anyways, there was, you know, not the greatest action, but not the worst action either. So yeah, right there, pretty good, not far from great, but again, with the way it was booked, made a lot of sense.
Did it? The only thing I thought about watching this was, did this layout, did it kind of fit where they were? Like, this felt like the second match or the third match in a series of matches, you know, where you would do something like this, where, you know, you would have a match, let's say you'd have a match between the two of them where they both get counted out, you know, or Razor gets counted out for whatever reason, you know, and then you do this. Like, that's the only thing I thought about. Did that cross your mind, or based on where they were at the time, you thought that it fit?
Yeah, no, I didn't think about, you know, that angle of it. You could see in hindsight, if they had had a similar count out win for Jarrett, and this is his second one, that would make more sense why he would be so, hey, you're not getting out that easy again. Get
Yeah,
back in here, that kind of thing. It could have worked, but you don't want to make Razor look, weak in the meantime, and
yeah.
have him as your champion taking, a loss, even a count out loss where he keeps the title. So I think this probably worked better in that sense, just to get to it, and then moving forward, I know they have a bunch of matches against each other, so um, you're going to get the roadie interference, you're going to get the knee work, you're going to get all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I think it worked, and
And
they had
it
some
gets heat on
screwy
Jarrett.
stuff later, so having a finish with a title change was good in the opening match because we'll get to it, but we didn't get that later.
No, no. Yeah, I mean you do get a decisive finish. It's the opening match. Crowd is hot, ready to go. So yeah, it is. It does work in that sense. Just to kind of go through some of the machinations, there was a bit of a hot start, which found Jarrett to the outside. He regroups. The arm drags Razor. He does the strut. We do get a Razor chant. Um, Razor clotheslines Jarrett to the outside of the ring a little bit later on. Then there's an arm bar. Jarrett breaks it up. We get a series of drop kicks to a near fall. There is a heat segment by Jarrett. I think that's the one where it includes the headlock and then a sleeper. We get a brief comeback, and that leads to a neck breaker, to a series of near falls where Jarrett is trying to use the ropes. The ref stops it. So I'm glad to see that. Razor drags Jarrett. We get the dragging of Jarrett onto the ring post where he hits him in the old jewels. And then Razor hits a bulldog to a near fall. Then we get to the clipping that we talked about. That's where the match gets stopped. There is a little bit of action after the match restarts. There's a couple of near falls. Jarrett works Razor's leg. And he does like this thing, he does like an atomic knee drop, but he drops his knee on top of Jarrett's knee. So we get that. He sits on his prone leg on the ropes. We do get a figure 4 playing into the leg situation. Razor does break it, and there is a suplex off the top. So at least they gave Razor a little bit of offense in the comeback. I don't know that, because I was kind of thinking about that. Do you want Razor just completely dominated? You want to give him a little something, to protect him. So,
Yeah, and to hype the crowd a little bit. You don't want him to, look like an idiot for restarting the match. You want him to look. It's that balance, right, between
yes.
being brave and being stupid. And
Yes, because if he gets in nothing, that's exactly the point. That is exactly
yeah,
the point. So yeah, I thought overall, yeah, 2.5. I mean, I'm not a star rating kind of person, but I don't know, maybe 3.25. It wasn't that bad. You know what it is? I think there was more natural heat between Razor and Owen than there was between Razor and Jarrett. Not that there was heavy heat between Razor and Owen, but there was history. They had the match on Raw, the King of the Ring that we covered, so there was a little bit more there.
yeah.
So, there really wasn't a lot of heat between Razor and Jarrett. So that's why I think they did it this way, to kind of add that, heat that wasn't there.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So there we go. Jarrett is your Intercontinental Champion. We go back. Todd Pettengill talks to Pamela Anderson, who shows off a series of gifts from a bunch of baby faces, including a Lex Luger shirt that she wears to bed. So, yeah. I wrote down Pettengill is just a nerd. That's my note.
Pretty much the
Yeah.
Michael Cole of his time.
Yes. And then Stephanie Wyand talks to Jeff Jarrett after he wins the title. And then, John, we move to the match with IRS. I think this is his last pay-per-view, believe it or not, because I don't think he's on another pay-per-view in 1995. So at least we're going to get spared of that.
There you go.
I have to look ahead, but I think this is it for him on pay-per-view anyway. The Undertaker against IRS. So we covered what set this up. IRS had attacked The Undertaker during the casket match with Yokozuna at Survivor Series, while Bam Bam Bigelow and King Kong Bundy were causing a distraction. Undertaker ended up winning that match, but the feud between Undertaker and the $1 Million Corporation went on. And of course, John, IRS gets on the mic, says no one will rest in peace until they pay their taxes.
Well, you gotta stick with what you know. Real quick, it's just kind of funny. The other day on Saturday Night's Main Event, they were showing some of the old wrestlers. Frank, you're frozen. I don't know. Okay, you're back.
Yeah, I've got you.
Okay.
I think I was
sorry.
I think my head was just like,
Well, something happened on my screen that caused a distraction and something closed, and then I thought there was a problem. And when I looked at you, it looked like you were frozen. And I was just okay. So
was it IRS running in?
It could have been. He's looking for. I haven't filed my taxes.
We didn't pay our taxes, John. We
haven't filed it. Anyway, so Saturday Night's Main Event, real quick. They're showing some of the old time wrestlers, including Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and he's got the 2x4, and he's going, "Ho, USA, USA!" And Allison, watching with me, she says, "You got to be careful what you do in your career because you may end up having to carry a 2x4 around." Like 20 years after you retire. And it's so true. And I think, it made me think of IRS or, Rotundo, who, every reunion, every vintage show where he shows up, he's got to show up with the shirt and the tie and the glasses and the briefcase. And he's got to say, and Ted DiBiase's got to have the belt and do the laugh and and a lot of these guys were so much better than just those things that they're remembered for. And I mean, hey, they're remembered, and that's important too.
Listen, you know what, and we'll write his epitaph here in a little bit, IRS, but listen, I'm not defending any kind of quality that he put out, but he at least worked for this time because that's what they were pushing. They were pushing gimmicks, and people booed and, wanted to see him get his ass beat. And that's what it's about. Now, was it good quality? Probably not, but it worked for that time. I mean, I don't think IRS works in 1998.
Right.
Or even today, it definitely doesn't work.
Right.
Doesn't work with 1998 with D'Lo Brown because D'Lo Brown was maybe they would have had a feud because D'Lo Brown's an accountant, so maybe they could have had a feud. Now that I would have seen.
Oh Lord.
Just saying. All right, so this barn burner went 12.5 minutes. It's won by The Undertaker, who kind of pins IRS out of nowhere with a choke slam. Doesn't even hit him with the tombstone. By the way, before I go further, I see a couple of people in the chat. Feel free to put comments up. We'll put them on the board. And reach out to others. We'll hear what you have to say. That's what it's all about. And of course, I appreciate everybody listening afterwards on the VIP network. But feel free to comment as we go through the show. The Druids get involved because they're waved out by Ted DiBiase eventually. And I should say that I kind of skipped a couple of steps here. The Druids were coming out with IRS in advance of this match. He was going to tombstones and repossessing them because the dead people didn't pay their taxes on them. So, this is what we're feuding about in 1995. Anyway, Taker gets up. After a near fall, he attempts a tombstone, but he's distracted by the Druids, and then eventually he does hit the choke slam for the win. Wade rates this at a 1. Quote, because IRS is so ordinary, combined with the routine-oriented Undertaker, this wasn't much of a match unless you're entertained merely by the mystique and spectacle of the Undertaker. And I think that's fair. I really think that's fair. Like, I'm thinking they probably thought this was cool because it's death and taxes feuding with each other. And it probably makes some sense, in your head or in creative's head, like, oh yeah, Undertaker represents death and IRS represents taxes. It's a natural fit, pal.
Yeah.
But in practice, it's really not a great match. I mean, as you say, John, and as we talk about a lot, eventually you have to get between the ropes and wrestle a match.
Yeah. And for me, I'm rating this match as should not have happened. And I'll tell you why. We'll get into it obviously much later at the end of the show, but these two should have been in the Royal Rumble.
Oh, I got
And
some points on that.
you take out it's 12 minutes of a match, but it's 20 minutes or whatever with ring entrances and post-match, pre-match. This Royal Rumble is ridiculously short,
Yep.
So again, we'll talk about it at the end, but this is a match. Take out the two people because for better, Undertaker was a big star and IRS was not a big star, but he was a solid mid-card guy who was certainly higher than at least half the people in the match. So he would add at least some star power over some of the people. And you increase the length of the Royal Rumble itself, and you do away with this match. You could have them interact in the Rumble and do some of the same things. You could even have the Druids come out to try to eliminate Undertaker because there's no, you could tell a lot of the same story, but in the context of the Rumble, and then you keep it shorter. Undertaker, it's not like he's going to lose something by being eliminated in a fluky way from the Rumble. He's going to land on his feet. It's like, he's going to get clotheslined over, land on his feet. So it's not like he even hits the mat. That would have been so much better for a number of reasons than this. I mentioned Jarrett throwing some good drop kicks in the tag title match for all of his whatever issues. Bob Holly threw a good drop kick, and he throws a bunch of nice drop kicks in that match. This match starts with IRS running across the ring to attack Undertaker from behind and throwing the worst drop kick in the history of the universe. And I'm sitting there thinking, if you're trying to hurt him, why don't you just go full on charge?
Exactly.
You run, then you have to stop, jump, and barely kick him. So he kind of bumps it was a terrible start it was an odd choice of a start for that spot. And it didn't get any better from there. You had Lawler talking nonstop in the first half about the lack of Druids. Why doesn't he have the Druids out here? That's a big mistake by D. It was so Druid-tastic, focused on the commentary before they were there and then they were there, that takes away from the actual two wrestlers. And you get basically a big kind of waste of time that could have been time and star power that could have been used so much better on this show. Yeah. So that's about it.
All to set up, because let's be honest, this was about the post match. This was about the stare down between Undertaker and King Kong Bundy, which sets up their match at WrestleMania, and then IRS stealing the urn.
Right.
That's why we spent 20 to 25 minutes between entrances and whatnot, just so IRS could steal an urn.
Right.
And I agree with you, because this Rumble has got no star power whatsoever outside of a few guys that aren't even really pushed in that fashion.
Yeah.
And Undertaker and IRS, or I was texting with some friends of mine. People needed to pull double duty. I mean, they did it in 94.
I was going to ask, I thought of that. I couldn't remember when that started. And I was never a fan of that. And I understood sometimes it was maybe necessary. But yeah, this could have been a year with Jarrett and Razor, for instance. Maybe not Razor. You could have had him in it and not able to do it, kind of thing, because of his knee injury. But there were some definite options there to add a little with the double duty. So yeah, 94 then was the first year they did that.
Well, when Stephen Dunn, Timothy Well, Aldo Montoya, Mantar, the Bushwhackers, the Blue Brothers are the very dangerous Quang, okay? When you know what I mean? When they're filling out your Royal Rumble, people needed to pull double duty.
yeah, at least cancel this match, put these two in, and take out Well Done. We'll get to it, but when he came out, which one was the first one? Well, when he came out, I was like, I have no clue who that guy is.
Well
No
done that
clue.
you knew that, John.
Yeah. And I looked him up and then I was like, oh, well done. Okay, I remember that name now. But, and I could be wrong, but I don't even think Vince McMahon knew who he was. Like, I don't even think he ever said his name. Now, if he said it, I missed it, and
Yeah.
I could be wrong. But if my viewing, I'm just like, I don't think they even knew who it was. So, it's just kind of, yeah. So we'll talk about it more. It was a lot of tag teams, and I'll defend Aldo Montoya, but
Yeah.
but a lot of these guys are DOA, so it's like
Yeah.
whether you do double duty, take this match off the card, put it in the Rumble instead. You can set up Bundy and Taker in the Rumble. You can
Sure.
have IRS get eliminated and grab the urn from Paul Bearer, run away, which distracts Undertaker and lets Bundy, eliminate him. I mean, it writes
Exactly.
itself. And why they wanted to go with this match instead of putting it, I think it's just probably like you said, they had started the build at Survivor Series, so it's not like the match came out of nowhere. Um, but it should have gone back to nowhere.
Yeah. Azan, thanks for the chat. IRS seems like a better worker out of New York before and after this. There's probably something to that. I mean, he wasn't too bad with Barry Windham in the WWF when they were doing that. And then he worked with Danny Spivey. That's when I started watching. I started after they split up or after Barry, one of the times Barry left the WWF. And then there was, I think it was VK Wall Street. If memory serves me correct, he was in the Varsity Club. So yeah, there's probably a little bit better work away from New York. The Rotunda family with not great gimmicks in the WWE throughout the years. Justin, my good buddy, he's been a co-host on this show, the Mid Card Rumble. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Why the Undertaker and kayfabe be interested in Miss Anderson? Well, I guess a man got to feel what a man got to feel is on. You know what I mean, brother? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, he's the dead man, but he's not really dead yet, right?
He might be the dead man, but not everything is dead. You know what I'm talking about? Oh, boy. Pro wrestling then and now after dark.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's a lot of puns we could go to, but let's just move on.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right. We've talked Undertaker IRS more than we probably needed to. We get a couple of pre-recorded segments where Todd Pettengill talks to a shirtless Diesel and calls him Deez. And I kind of tuned out after that. I'm like, yeah, that's just bad. Then he talks to Bret Hart. Both guys are actually, what I did like about this, though, in all seriousness, both guys were really kind of serious and didn't seem to want to talk. And I like that. It's makes the title match feel important.
Yeah. And it's more sports-like for a promotion that didn't have a lot of sports-like atmosphere. That's one thing that one instance where it was.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. And then we get to said title match between Diesel and Bret the Hitman Hart. Diesel is your WWF champion. So we covered their first pay-per-view match at King of the Ring 94. The roles were reversed, though. Bret was champ. Diesel was the Intercontinental Champion at the time. Bret retained via Jim Neidhart. That set up Jim Neidhart helping Owen later. Bret had, of course, lost to Bob Backlund. We covered that with Survivor Series 94. He lost the WWF Championship. And then Diesel had beaten him a few nights later in 8 seconds at MSG. And just to talk about what was going on, Diesel had worked, or Bret had worked Jarrett on Raw. He beat his brother at MSG in a no-holds-barred match. Diesel had beaten Jeff Jarrett, on the same house show. And he retained over Bob Backlund at a house show in San Diego. And they had to change because they were going to do more houses between Backlund and Diesel, and the matches were just so bad that they had to switch to Jarrett. So that's why we really didn't get. I'll be honest. I think we kind of floated the idea of maybe Diesel facing Backlund and winning at the Royal Rumble instead of on a house show. They probably had enough. They probably knew what they were talking. They were probably ahead of the curve and saying, you know what, this might not be good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, Backlund and Bret worked a lot better on pay-per-view. Backlund and Diesel, not so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
No, that was fine.
yeah. So that
And I'm
worked out
always a
here.
big believer, Frank, and I don't know if this was part of their calculus, but and it's not so much now because they don't do as many house shows, but I always felt they missed a lot of opportunities to promote house shows. So
Yeah.
showing a title change like that on a house show at the time may increase some house show ticket purchases. Because you
Yeah.
say, wow, look what happened when Diesel beat Bob Backlund. That's not even IC title or that's
That's the
world
world
title
title.
right there. I got to go to the next show. Who
Yeah.
knows what I'm going to see? So I was always a big advocate of that. I've floated the idea if WWE ever wanted to do a G1 style round robin tournament, like have that and have like some of those matches on those house shows and show the highlights on Raw and
Yeah.
SmackDown. You could have the Raw bracket, the SmackDown bracket. You have matches each week on Raw and SmackDown, and then in between, do some of those other matches on the house shows.
Yeah.
And you advertise it ahead of time. Come see these important tournament matches. And there's a lot they could do over the years to make those house shows feel special, and they have missed
Yeah.
more often than they've hit. So I think what they did was smart. It was shocking because he turned into that Raw after Survivor Series. And if you watch Survivor Series, you're expecting to see Bob Backlund come out as a new champion, and instead it's Diesel, and it's like, wait, what? What did I miss?
Exactly.
So they have that going for them, and don't subject the pay-per-view fans to the match. It's just a bonus.
Azan, people hate Nash so much. Hate Nash so much run, but he did take I think what he's saying is they hated the Diesel title run, but he did take things serious. You know, look, yeah, Diesel's title run is not very well remembered or revered, I should say. I think the problem, and we could sum this up a little bit more when we get towards the end of the year, but I was talking to Tyler Sage about this. We covered Survivor Series 95. I think the problem was it was just kind of like thrown at us. So we really didn't have a chance to kind of fall in love with Diesel, and have that natural connection to him. It was just kind of like, oh, now we're doing this, like there really wasn't he was getting cheered. Yes. So there is that. And he was emerging. And I think people wanted to see him and Michael split. So I guess there is something to that, but also like Big Daddy Cool. Like, would you walk around to your friends saying, yo man, I'm Big Daddy Cool? Probably
I don't
not.
know. I was 14. I would have
Probably got punched.
God knows what I would have said.
Yeah.
Well, and he had, though, that aside, he had some cool factor when he was a heel. And when he became a babyface, he became too watered down and corporate.
He was cool. Yeah. When he was and then when he turned,
Yeah.
he was
And
cool.
but they watered it down, and over that time, because I remember I had a friend in high school. Like I said, so 95, I'm 15. I'm in high school. I had a bunch of friends, WWF fans. And one of them, I remember, again, flash forward, when he turned heel again after losing the title to Bret.
Yeah.
I had a friend who was so happy because he was a big Diesel fan, but he was just like, now he's got his edge back.
Right.
He was as a 15 at that point, 16-year-old by the time Survivor Series 95 comes around. That's why, one of the big reasons WCW had more of a cool factor. They had more
Right.
of that edge factor to appeal to the people at my age at that time, 15, 16, 17-year-old, boys,
Right.
teenagers, where WWF was, just not as cool. And
Right.
Diesel's run really kind of showed that off, that the coolest things he did was when we weren't supposed to be cheering for him. And the
Right.
lamest stuff he did was when we were supposed to be cheering for him.
And the promos he's cutting, he's smiling, there's a couple that Wade alludes to in some of the newsletters that it's just like the reason why people started cheering Diesel as a heel, those reasons or those factors got taken away when they made him more of a smiley type of champion, and nobody wanted to see that. Right. So had they just left it the way it was and just make him a babyface, it might. And there's other things too that we could talk about it with Bret here because we're going to get to this match. Just want to put a couple of comments up here from Dr. Ross. Hi everyone. The 95 Rumble was actually the first one I ever watched. That's pretty cool. That's it's I think my first was actually the first one. I rented it out on tape or something, but yeah.
And my first was 89, so the second one, the first pay-per-view one. And my dad had a coworker because we didn't have pay-per-view capabilities in our small town cable company at that time, but my dad had a coworker who got it and taped it, and he borrowed it like 2 or 3 days later. So we watched it in the middle of the week, having no idea, what had happened. Because for us, we wouldn't have known until Superstars on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to watch that live, so early in my life, but you know what I mean? Not live, but live-ish. That was my first.
Azan here in the chat, they did that idea with King of the Ring last year. I think that was regarding your suggestion about doing some tournament matches at a house show. And that does ring a bell. I can't remember what matches it was, but that does ring a bell.
Yeah, they stole the idea from me.
Yeah, exactly. John Mezzera needs credit, folks. All right. Let's get to Diesel against Bret. This goes a while. This goes just under 27 and a half minutes. It's ruled a draw. So Shawn Michaels, Jeff Jarrett, and the Roadie all attack Diesel while Owen Hart and Bob Backlund attack Bret Hart. And the ref rules the match a draw. The crowd isn't happy about it, but the real kicker to this whole thing, mid-match, Diesel hits a jackknife on Bret to a near fall, and then Shawn Michaels runs out and attacks Diesel. And the referee decides that the match must continue. Later, Bret's got the sharpshooter on Diesel, and Owen Hart comes out and attacks Bret. And the ref says the match must continue. I'm sorry, those two factors, that kind of took me out of the match. I mean, I listen, you want to see, in the moment, and if I was watching live, and I didn't watch this live, but I probably would have been like, okay, we're going to get a finish out of this. And then you do a non-finish anyway. So why bother doing the non-DQs? Just do everybody attacking everybody at the end and call it a draw if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, and you also didn't mention, Bret hit Diesel with a chair.
We're gonna get to that. Yeah, that's another one.
But that was another point where he could have stopped the match on a DQ and would have been perfectly justified in doing so. So you actually had 3 moments where the referee could have stopped the match on a DQ and didn't. And then
Bret had a figure 4. I got this in my note. Diesel got to the ropes and Bret didn't let go. Very similar to SummerSlam 93.
Right. And for a long period, that was not like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Come on. That went on for a good amount of time. Bret playing the temporary heel role here, which was interesting. Curious if that was a tryout or what they had thinking, because it's not like they stuck with it.
We're going to talk about that in a second, because I have that in my notes to talk about.
So, but to your first point, I think you said it best. You tease the non-finish twice, which makes the fans expect a finish, and then you don't deliver.
Right.
Makes it worse for sure. And it's pretty weak.
And Todd Martin talks about this on The Fix. If you don't want to do this match and you don't want to do it, then why book this match? Azan points out here, they already did BS at 94 King of the Ring with these two, and they did.
Yeah.
That was I mean, that was different because that was storyline, but again, it's a non-finish to a title match on a pay-per-view.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they did 4 or 5 now pay-per-views, It wasn't like a few years later when they're doing one a month. I mean, those were rare.
Those were rare. And
so
if you go back,
give those finishes.
Go back to 94, Royal Rumble. All right, Yokozuna's champion. Everybody interferes, knocks out The Undertaker. Luger Yokozuna, disqualification at WrestleMania. SummerSlam, okay, it's a steel cage match, different story, but still, you had to cover it up because you couldn't just do a straight out title win.
Yeah.
And then you had technically shenanigans at Survivor Series 94. So when do we get that? We don't get it until WrestleMania. And that match is, that I remember, okay, between Diesel and you know what I mean? But it's just, it continues.
Well, there's two differences. The first is they were protecting Diesel because they had big plans for him at King of the Ring.
Mm-hmm.
And then in this match, it's babyface.
Yes.
And so when you get to, there was no concern about a clean finish Diesel-Shawn because Shawn was still a little ways away, even though he was on that trajectory. Mm-hmm. And you want to send the fans home happy, your biggest show of the year. All of that makes sense. So I can get the rationalization, even though I don't agree with it. I can see why they do it in these instances. But why are you doing it again with the same two wrestlers? And to your point, hindsight 2020, how would we feel if you didn't have those two earlier, and Shawn was a little late getting to the ring also. Some of the execution there, because he was clearly supposed to hit the ring before he did, because it was a little sloppy. How was Bret supposed to kick out? Was it supposed to be before a kick out? It was a little, if you watch the timing. So the execution for
I missed that. I'd have to watch it.
There was a little timing issue where it almost seemed like Bret was supposed to not kick out, but he had to kick out maybe because Shawn was late getting to the ring. Owen's timing was perfect. But anyways, it's a shame because these two, I mean, the action, was good. The Bret stuff was interesting with him being more aggressive, playing more of a heel role, maybe a little obsessive about getting that title back. He played the role well.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to like in this match. And I think they had pretty good chemistry in the ring.
Vince Wade had reported that they had a lot of respect for each other, even in this time. Like Bret and Kevin Nash really liked each other. They were good friends. They respected each other. And, I think, listen, it was no accident that Diesel's first title defense was against Bret, because you're giving him a high quality, you want it to be a good quality match.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
And it could be one of the reasons why Diesel's, like, his title run really never gets that signature win. He never gets that moment. Like he beats Shawn at WrestleMania, right? We're going to cover that. Later in the year, he has matches against Sid. Okay. But then Mabel, like, he never gets that win. His best title match is the one where he loses to Bret, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And it's like, is that me saying that he should have beaten Bret here? I don't know, but maybe, and that leads me to a point that you brought up. Bret was acting heelish. Okay. Now, I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that they wanted to solidify Diesel as the babyface. Like, they wanted you to make it, because Bret got the good reaction. Bret got a better reaction than Diesel coming out. So, I think that was strategic. It was to make sure that you cheered Diesel. And then at the end of, after all is said and done, after the shenanigans are done, they hug, they embrace. So, yay, Diesel's a good guy. Okay, everybody like him now. Clap, clap, clap.
Well, and you want Bret to be cheered later on in the Rumble, which we'll get to, too. So you can't have the fans upset too much at Bret because
and that is a very good point. That is a very good item to bring up, because now I ask you, talk about the wasted guys in 1995. I think one of them is The Undertaker, and we'll we'll talk about him later, okay? Could you have made a case for Bret Hart turning heel? Skip the whole embrace after the match. And I'm not saying when to do it, but you look at the depth chart in 95, it is very strong on the babyface side. I mean, eventually, Shawn, he's your number 2 babyface. Let's be honest. It's Diesel number 1. That relegates Bret to working with Bob Backlund, Jerry Lawler in a Kiss My Foot match, and Isaac Yankem.
Yeah.
Do you accelerate the Bret Hart heel turn instead of doing it in 97? Okay. Or maybe you still do it, but you turn him heel now. I mean, I think you've got another, because look at your heel depth chart. Tatanka, King Kong Bundy, Bam Bam Bigelow, right? I'm talking after WrestleMania.
Right.
You get Sid back, but you never could count on Sid. And then Men on a Mission turn. I mean, it's just, it's bodies, but it's nobody quality. Bret Hart turns heel.
Yeah.
Maybe you do the Hart Foundation stuff early.
Yeah, or just, he could have had a run. Yeah, the issue, of course, becomes what do you do with Owen? Because it was too early at that point, I think, for an Owen reunion. This is my opinion. Too soon for that. You're not going to have Owen go back babyface. The other issue is now you've done Bret and Diesel at 2 pay-per-views. And if Bret becomes your top heel to work with your top babyface, is it too much of them? You've got them, as you said, reversed role, or the babyface heel at King of the Ring, babyface here. You could go back to it a third time where you got babyface heel with the roles reversed from King of the Ring. But, at some point, does it start to get a little, too familiar? And that it might have been the concern. And I don't remember, having read Bret's autobiography when it first came out years ago, his mindset, he wasn't necessarily high on turning heel, but obviously he was fine with showing some of those heel tactics and tendencies here. So who knows? But your overall point of the lack of heels, and that's always, I think, to your point about Diesel's title reign, when Becky Lynch won the title, it was a big moment.
Yeah.
It was a huge moment. And she was over, and she was a star. Who did she have to work with as the champion?
Lacey Evans.
That's not Becky's fault.
No.
So we can look at Becky's, that title run as being disappointed because of how hot she was becoming the champion. But WWFE has the responsibility because, Hogan's title run was better when he was facing Piper than when he was facing Kamala, right? I mean,
well, him and not to digress too much. Him and Kamala was not so bad, but no, Haku,
sure.
Sika,
I mean,
like these guys were not pushed at a high level, so that's where I think you're going.
Right, exactly, and it's just right. And when you have a hot program, when you've got, it was a bit of a problem too, as hot as the promotion got, and obviously it was the hottest it ever been. But Austin, his main rival is McMahon. And who is McMahon picking? It's kind of like the version of who is Ted DiBiase picking to face The Undertaker from his stable? Who is Bobby Heenan picking from his stable to face Hogan? It's a historic problem with WWE because they have traditionally been, with some, Roman Reigns being a exception to the rule. It's a babyface champion promotion, right? Historically, as opposed to some other promotions which were more heel champion. But when you've got a good baby face, you got to have good heels for them to face. And Diesel, once you got past Shawn, because again, here he's facing a baby face. Shawn's a good heel opponent at WrestleMania, but after that, who does he lose the title to? Another baby face. And so it was a bad year for the top heels in the company. And could Bret have made a difference? Absolutely. I can see why they didn't do it, but
There's a lot of rewriting that you would have to do. My point is what he ends up doing is just not good quality. So, I understand. Listen, somebody's got to play that role. They were pushing. I mean, somebody had to work with Lawler. They were bringing in Glenn Jacobs to play. So, I mean, somebody's got to do it. But, yeah, I just, somebody that could have made. Maybe he does a program with Bret and that puts some heat on their match at WrestleMania 12. Maybe Bret works that match as a heel.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of, there would be a lot of, and it's something that I'll think about as we talk about this year, and maybe I'll abort it. I don't know. But there's a lot of rewriting that would have to be done to make it work.
Sure.
But I'm just trying to find something better for Bret to do in 95 than kissing, or having Lawler kiss his feet. Or making Jerry kiss his own feet. I think that's what ended up.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, because he had made his.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so real quick, let's just run through some of the highlights of the match. Bret did swat Diesel's fist bump, so playing into that heelish tendencies that he was doing. We get a slugfest early on. At one point, Bret finds his way to the outside. We talked about the figure 4. Bret attacks Diesel on the outside. Diesel turns it around. He rams Bret into the stairs. At one point, it looked like Diesel was going to go for the the jackknife, but he puts him in a backbreaker submission. We do get the Bret sequence, and the neck breaker, the backbreaker, and then the elbow off the second rope. That's a typical... that's typical for Bret matches. Diesel kind of like no-sells a clothesline over the top, and then he catches Bret flying, coming off the ropes, and throws him into the railing. At this point, so Jerry had predicted Bret would win the match, and then here he changes it to Diesel. So Jerry was good for that. And it was a royal prediction, by the way.
Yeah.
Talk about the Shawn Michaels run-in. There is a third figure 4. And they point out that Bret had not applied the sharpshooter yet, which is important. That comes in later. Bret does refuse to break a hold with Diesel in the corner. So again, Bret acting heelish. Talked about the no DQ with Owen. We talked about it with Shawn Michaels earlier. We get a near fall by Diesel. Bret comes back. He just kind of slugs Diesel into the ground, and then now they're just forearming each other. It's getting nasty. One thing, though, I do want to point out that's important: the finish to Survivor Series 95 is done in this match. Only you caught that, right?
I caught that. I mean, I wouldn't have. Obviously, we didn't know at the time, and I wouldn't have remembered. At Survivor Series, I wouldn't have remembered back to Royal Rumble at the time. But when I saw that, I was like, wait a minute.
Yep. And I have to go back now. I'd be curious to watch Survivor Series 95. Do they talk about it on commentary? I mean, probably not, because I don't think Vince, because Vince hates wrestling. Another podcast for another day. He wouldn't point that out.
I would
remember that.
Highly doubt it.
Exactly. So at any rate, and just so for people that, I mean, I'm sure everybody's familiar, but Bret plays possum, and then Diesel as Diesel is about to probably jackknife him, Bret rolls him into the small package. It does prove successful for Bret at Survivor Series 95, not so much here, but they do that finish. We talked about the interference. And then the post-match, Bob Backlund puts the cross-face chicken wing on Bret while everybody's going after Diesel. Diesel fights off everyone, and then he bails Bret out, and then they kiss and make up, and, Diesel's a good guy. Yay! We can like him now. Yay! So, all right. I had some other what ifs here. We kind of talked about it with Bret turning heel. There's a lot that could have been this year. There's a lot of tweaks that could have been made to make it better. But we'll talk about it come WrestleMania. I got to think about it a little bit. So, me with my what ifs.
Yep.
All right. Next match is for the WWF Tag Team Championship. It is 1-2-3 Kid and Bob Holly against Bam Bam Bigelow and Tatanka of the $1 Million Corporation. This was the final match of a tournament for the vacated Tag Team Championship, which had been vacated when Shawn Michaels and Diesel could not function as a team anymore via what happened at Survivor Series 94. Excuse me. Let's see here. Kid and Holly had beat the Heavenly Bodies in the semifinals, while Bigelow and Tatanka beat the Head Shrinkers, the second version of the Head Shrinkers, Sione and Fatu. You know them better as the Barbarian and the eventual Rikishi. Kid and Holly replaced the Smoking Guns in the tournament because of Bart being injured in a rodeo. I did a little research to see if that was real, and because I don't buy that for a second.
I would assume he was injured in real life, but not in a rodeo.
Not in a rodeo. Yeah.
I don't really know what Bart Gunn was up to. You know, as a San Francisco Giants fan, people who aren't familiar with the story, Madison Bumgarner in the offseason participated in rodeos under a false name.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Look it up, like Google it, and I can't remember it's a funny name, like, and just the fact that he had the gall to do it, I think is awesome. And you know, you can't say a bad word around, you know, these parts about Madison Bumgarner. So when it came out, I think a lot of the team executives were not happy, but it made him even more popular with the fans.
Yeah.
So maybe Bart Gunn was competing, moonlighting as an actual rodeo guy, but I'm guessing that was all storyline driven.
So I Wikipedia'd it. It's Mason Saunders.
There you go.
Madison Bumgarner. Yes. I am all too familiar with Madison Bumgarner from the wild card game in 2016. And this is before I knew you, John.
That's right.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes.
Otherwise, we wouldn't be friends.
Oh God, what was the guy's name that hit the home run? It was
Connor Gillespie.
Connor Gillespie. That's it. Off of Jerry's Familia. Yes.
Yep. That was I think I talked to you about it at the time, but he was a very interesting kind of story of redemption, because he was a high prospect with the Giants who just got passed by Pablo Sandoval at third base. They ended up trading him. He had a couple decent years with a few teams, bounced around, never really caught on, came back to the Giants and hit that ridiculously surprising, huge, you know, wild card home run. It's kind of a little redemption story for him. So it was a nice story for us, not so nice for the Mets fans, I'm sure, but
yes. Yes. All right. Let's see. Before the match, Todd Pettengill talked to Pamela Anderson, who wants her fuzzy purse handed to her and some clothes while she's trying to change. And then Stephanie Wyan talks to Kid and Holly, and Bob Holly says they're like the San Diego Chargers, who were competing in the Super Bowl that year, I believe, against your San Francisco 49ers. Yes.
Yes.
49ers trounced them like 55-10 or something like that.
Now that was a Broncos a few years before. This was like it's 40 something like 49-20 something. So it wasn't quite the trouncing, but that was Steve Young, I think, set the record for most touchdown passes in a Super Bowl that year. I don't know if it still stands, but you know, they used to actually rush the ball back then, unlike most teams now. So the fact that he set the record at that time, and like I said, it might still be the record. If it wasn't, it lasted a long time. But yeah, that was definitely good memories for us at that time. Yeah.
15 and a half minutes. Kid and Holly win it. So it's kind of a weird finish. So Bam Bam Bigelow goes for a moonsault while Tatanka is going for an elbow drop. Bam Bam falls down and he's just like out for a minute. It's kind of weird.
Very weird.
And this is all on 1, 2, 3 Kid. And Kid just gets up, drapes his arm over Bam Bam, and gets the win. Wade rates it at 3 3/4 stars. This was the most inventive and athletic match of the night. The underdog story was also well developed. The crowd reacted more to this match than anything other than the ring entrances during the Rumble. Yeah, they reacted to this a lot better than pretty much every entrant at the Royal Rumble. So, I thought this was pretty good, but this is more about the post match. We'll get to that, which we'll get to in a second. But let's talk about the match. What'd you think?
Yeah, I'm maybe a little surprised that he had it rated that high. It felt a little bit of a slog to me in the middle because
A
it
little
was
long.
very one-sided. It was like almost a squash.
Yeah,
If you go back in time, the amount of offense each team gets, and you told me it was 90-10 for the heels, I would believe you. Now, it might be 60-40 or 70-30, but
yeah,
I would believe you if you told me it was 90-10 because they did my recollection is they did a long thing to eventual hot tag, and one,
yes,
two, three kid comes in and he gets about 30 seconds of offense before the heels took over again. I
yeah,
mean, it was very one-sided. And yes, the underdog story was told well. And the ending was also odd because it just didn't seem like Bigelow would still be out after such a long time.
right.
At least do a leverage pin instead of an arm draping pin would have been more believable. Or are you just trying to protect him? Have him hit one move. Have Kid
Yeah,
hit a moonsault. Do something.
yeah,
So I wasn't as high on this match. It dragged for me. And yeah, you're right about the crowd reaction, and that's ultimately what matters most, right? But the match for me, it was fine, and it told the story it needed to tell. It could have, and again, Bob Holly, 1, 2, 3 Kid have a lot more athleticism, especially at that time, than Tatanka and Bam Bam.
yeah,
They could do some moves that were more exciting to watch, and we just didn't get to see much of that outside of, like I said, Bob Holly hit a few good, like 3 good drop kicks, and you get a few of those cool spin heel kicks from Kid. But what else are you getting other than long, prolonged heel beatdown? So I wasn't as high on this match as Wade was apparently.
yeah. I'm with you. I was kind of like bored
Yeah.
about 5 or 6 minutes into the match. We I don't think we even have to go. I mean, I got all the machinations written down here, but we don't really have to go through it. I
Not
mean,
really.
the story is after the match. This was designed to set up the Bam Bam Bigelow Lawrence Taylor feud, which I have mixed feelings about, being a New York Giants fan. Um, Bam Bam, and we didn't really talk about Lawrence Taylor, but they mentioned him a lot throughout the show. That he was a guest of Diesel. They had been at the 75th anniversary of the NFL, and so Diesel, being the champ, had invited Lawrence Taylor. They had shook hands during the title match, and then here, Bam Bam, is just walking around the ring because that's what you do after a match. You walk around the ring to get ridiculed by everybody, and then he just makes his way over to Lawrence Taylor. Just happens to make his way, and Taylor is laughing at him. Bigelow shoves Lawrence Taylor, and then Lawrence Taylor comes back and comes at him. And there was actually some doubt in real time of this being real or a shoot. And Wade had reported that. And you look at the way that Vince, handled it. At one point, Jerry says, "Oh, he's not on the headsets," and then he apologizes for Bigelow's actions. As it turns out, the next night on Raw, they announced that he was suspended for 30 days. So that's how Wade knew that it wasn't, wasn't a work, because then he would have been fired.
Right.
You know, so um, yeah, so that's what that was about. And then Kid and Holly hold the titles for a day. They already knew they were getting the smoking guns at Raw, and Kid and Holly end up losing the title. So I'm guessing it was booked this way so that you could get that altercation. It wasn't about getting Kid and Holly the titles. It wasn't about telling an underdog story. Maybe that was a byproduct of it, but it was more about the post match between Bigelow and LT.
For sure. And I mean, you always have to take things with a grain of salt. Like every other match ends and they show the winner, raise his hand, a little bit of celebrating, and then they cut to Todd Pettengill in the back. Why did this one just happen to follow Bigelow?
Right.
If you
Exactly.
didn't know what was going to happen, okay, we can overlook that. That's wrestling. That's
Right.
why are they showing this guy walking down the hallway? Oh, he gets interrupted by,
Right.
you take those things for granted. Let's do another little what if. Call back to our previous conversation, double duty. Bigelow loses here, is dejected and angry. He does double duty in the Rumble. Again, so could Tatanka. You have a little more star power. He gets eliminated by Aldo Montoya or one of those lower level, one of the Bushwhackers, whoever. He gets eliminated by even lower level competition.
Hmm.
Then, because the match is still going, it makes sense to see his reaction, have him eliminated right there in front of LT on that
Thank
side of the
you.
ring.
Hmm.
And then he gets up in LT, and you have that, and they come out and pull it apart because you already have the officials down there for, you have multiple officials surrounding the ring. I think that would have, again, driven the double duty. As I said, not a fan in general, but sometimes it's necessary. This might have been a time to do that because you get that second step of the story, another reason why Bigelow would be, feeling upset, embarrassed, whatever, dejected. It adds fuel to the fire, and you get that moment in the Rumble match itself
Yep.
with LT. And LT obviously got a good reaction from the fans. I mean, they are chanting for him. And so, we know what would ultimately happen. I don't know that it would made it doesn't make a big difference in the long-term story, but in the
Right.
moment, I think that would have again added more power, star power to the Rumble match itself, and just added a little bit of something to the moment. As it was, I mean, it was fine. It was perfectly fine how they did it. It
Yeah.
just, I think, could have been a little better.
Correct. It's is on here. It's funny how 1, 2, 3 was never a tag champ with a member of the Clique. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they could have figured out him and Razor. I mean, he was I like the team of him and Marty Jannetty. I thought that was an underrated little tag team. It's too bad Marty couldn't keep his head out of his gluteal region, because I think that could have worked. But yeah, him and Sean, him and Diesel, they're never and I guess technically Aldo Montoya, right? Isn't Just Incredible one of the Click guys too? Isn't he
He was
kind of
like
like,
quick adjacent. I don't know. Was he in?
yeah, yeah, well, I know he's an X Factor later on, but I
Yeah,
always thought that he was like kind of like the sixth member of the Click. I don't know.
yeah, maybe.
I mean, yeah, I get, and Triple H, they were there at the same. Yeah, I don't think did him and H hold the tag titles as DX? No, right? I don't think
I
so.
don't
He did it
think
with
so.
Kane.
He did with Kane
With
in that
Kane, yeah,
same, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But I
He
mean,
got
it was mostly, yeah, it was mostly, yeah, the Outlaws as the tag team, and you had Triple H as the world champion level, and X-Pac as the kind of mid-card intercontinental European hardcore title.
Does Bob Holly have the record for most tag champs with different teammates? Boy, I got to look that up. I know him and Kid. Um, he loses. What was this with Cody? Cody turns on him and he teams with DiBiase.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, because he was champs with Cody, right? That was the
He's,
Cody thing. He was champ with
yeah,
Cody, and then Cody turned on him and he switched over to DiBiase.
yeah.
I'd have to think. I mean, was he a tag team with like Crash?
Probably, yeah, he and Crash must have had, again, we're talking hot potato titles.
Yeah, I'd have to
He
look
and
that up. But
Crash must have
I
had
know
the
if Fazan's bringing it
titles.
up, I know I know he's got that backed up. That's just something I'd have to look up on Wikipedia or something. But um, all right, we talked about what happened. We talked about the LT thing. Talked about what happened the next night. The Smoking Guns end up beating Kid and Holly, and then they actually do a rematch at a taping where Kid gets hurt, which is ironic because he had gotten hurt the previous year against the Quebecers when he and Jannetty dropped the title back to the Quebecers at, I think it was Madison Square Garden off the top of my head. So Wade was thinking that they might run a story where, Kid doesn't get his rematch, and that could have been an impetus for Kid turning heel, which he eventually does later in the year anyway on Razor. So, all right, let's get through here. Let's get to the Rumble here. Time is becoming of the essence. So we go back to the 94 Rumble. They highlight when Diesel eliminates a bunch of people, but then is inadvertently eliminated by Shawn Michaels, a little jewel of the 94 Rumble. Shawn talks about how he eliminated Diesel and he will do so to all the big men, and this is the year of HBK. They show multiple angles of Bret Hart and Lex Luger eliminating each other. They never show the right angle, though. It's amazing, right? They never show the actual angle where both feet touch the floor at the same time. So
yeah, I'm guessing they didn't have it on purpose.
Yes, correct. Luger says he's tired of being a contender and says 95 is the year of the man made in the USA, which if I was watching in real time and I had my wrestling brain now, I'd be like, yeah, no, this is not the year of the man made in the USA, because if it would have happened already. No.
Yeah, for sure.
Vince McMahon does apologize for what happened between Lawrence Taylor and Bam Bam Bigelow, so playing into the potential of it being a work.
And one thing real quick, I don't remember when he said it. I think it was during the match, but McMahon said, "We will never see a double winner in the Royal Rumble again. That was a once in a lifetime."
Yeah.
And then, it's not that long. What was it, 5 years when you get the Big Show and
the Rock and Big Show, but I think I forget. I was looking that up yesterday. I think it's reviewed and then Rock is declared the winner. Yeah, I'd have to look that up. But that was, Azan says, but that was shoot. Yeah. Cena and Batista.
Yeah.
Cena Batista. That's in 2005. Because that was a screw up. I think, what was it? Batista had Cena on his shoulders or something, and then they both fell out at the same time. Batista was supposed to win.
But didn't they restart it and have him actually win it?
Yeah.
Or did they do the? I can't remember. I remember watching it live, and was that when Vince McMahon came running out and tore his quads? Good Lord. Yep. Okay, by the way, I don't know, this is 2 years old, but somebody says it's Kane with 7. Undertaker, Mankind, X-Pac, Daniel Bryan, Rob Van Dam, The Hurricane, and Big Show.
There you go.
That's from 2 years ago. I'm guessing no one has passed that in the last 2 years. And this is unofficial, so,
Yep.
But, and Edge had 6. Christian, Rey Mysterio, Jericho, Orton, Benoit, and Hogan.
And Hulk Hogan, yes. The short-lived reign with his hero, Hulk Hogan.
So there you go. Probably more than Holly, but, I can't help it. I had to look it up.
There you go. All right, let's the Royal. There's probably not a lot to talk about with the Rumble match itself. The difference between this Rumble and other Rumbles is the entrants come in every 60 seconds, so the match only goes just under 39 minutes. Your winner is Shawn Michaels. He eliminates the British Bulldog. They are number 1 and 2 in the match, and they go all the way. So the finish is Bulldog throws Michaels over the top. They don't show Michaels' feet touching the floor. They play Bulldog's music, and we think he's the winner. But then Michaels comes back in as Bulldog is on the ropes and clotheslines him. And then Howard Finkel announces that both Shawn Michaels' feet did not touch the floor, and therefore Shawn Michaels is the winner. Azan says, is the real difference between number 1 and number 2 and K? There is no difference between 1 and 2. It's the same thing. So yeah, there's no
it's just like slightly sounds better. I want it from number 1 sounds better than I want it from number 2, even though it's the exact it's the exact same thing. And one other one of those wrestling things you just kind of you got to accept.
Everywhere. So, go ahead.
The 60 seconds thing hurt the match.
Yes.
There was the pace, you couldn't breathe.
And
And
that's one of Wade's points. That's one of
yeah,
his points. He talks about that. He says, let's see here. The Rumble this year lacked any continuity as a result of the quick entrances. Before anything could be really established, the crowd's attention turned to who was coming to the ring next.
yeah. And you
And
had it with the two times Bret came out to attack his brother and then Backland were particularly, I think, highlight the issue
yeah,
because they couldn't get into the ring and the other person is already coming to the ring. And I think, unless I missed, I think Owen's elimination happened off screen, unless I missed it. Bob Backlund's didn't, but it was like you needed that time. And again, to my earlier point, take away that Undertaker match.
mm-hmm.
You couldn't necessarily do the full 2 minutes, but you could have done 90 seconds here, added, 90 seconds, that's an extra 15 minutes of just time, 15 to 20 minutes in the end. That would have been helpful.
Yeah.
And it would have made for a better match. The star power would have been better. The rushed feeling would have been better. And my question is, do we know why they did it this way? And my only guess is the concern about Bulldog going the distance in a longer match. You're not going to be concerned about Sean going coast to coast in say a 53-minute match instead of a 38. But would you have concerns, because this was obviously a big plan to do 1 and 2 all the way through? So
No, I couldn't imagine Dick Murdoch with Pamela Anderson.
Well, he came out. I almost texted you, Frank. Dick Murdoch question mark.
Go for it, Dick. But you ain't getting Pam.
Yeah,
My honest opinion, why it was only 60 seconds. This is and I was looking through Wade's newsletters. I couldn't find a reason, and perhaps I just missed it. In all fairness, lack of star power. I think they just wanted to churn through the Rumble. Plus, also, I mean, if you think about it, they gave Diesel and Bret almost 30. They gave Razor and Jarrett almost 20. Yeah. They gave the tag title match 15 minutes. They gave to your point, they gave Undertaker and IRS over 12. So I think they were hiding a lack of star power in this Rumble. And I think you see, when you think of the 95 Rumble, what do you think about right away?
Just the end.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's
the
it.
Image.
That's all. And my opinion, I could be completely wrong. This is just my hunch, is that's all they cared about. You're going to remember Shawn Michaels hanging on. We're going to go, coast to coast with Shawn and Bulldog. We're going to
Which was good. It was a smart thing to do. It hadn't been done. Yeah.
And it really, it doesn't, and Wade talks about this, it's not as noteworthy as Ric Flair's performance in 92 where he goes 60. So it's really not about the two of them and this great endurance, but you remember it because they started it and then they finished it. And I'm watching, it's funny, Cameron, my middle child, was watching with me, and I'm looking at her 10 minutes into the match. She goes, and I asked her, I said, you know who's going to be the final two, right? She goes, yep, Shawn Michaels and British Bulldog. You could just tell. You could tell. Obviously we knew about it going into the match, but watching the match now, I could see how obvious it was that they were going to be the final two.
Yeah.
I don't know that it was this great feat because of who's in the Rumble, and you brought it up, Taker and IRS not in there. Bam Bam and Tatanka. I mean, Kid and Holly could have been in there. I mean, there's so much more star power that could have been
Razor,
Jarrett, Undertaker. I mean, there's just so many guys, and guys had pulled double duty the year before. Bret pulled double duty. Owen pulled double duty. I think Tatanka, Bigelow was in the Rumble, and they worked each other at Royal Rumble 94, if I remember correctly.
Okay. Yeah.
So I could be wrong about it. I have to look that up.
Certainly Bret and Owen did, because they were in the tag title.
Right.
Match.
And Bret walked, and that was part of the story. Bret hobbled out, and that's one of the great Rumble entrances there is.
Yeah.
But
if you look at this field, we've touched on it. Referred to it as the mid card. It's also the tag team
Oh
How
yeah,
many, I mean, how many guys? I mean, you're looking at real quickly the Blue Brothers,
Blue
you've
Brothers.
got the Heavenly Bodies, you've
Yep.
got the Head Shrinkers, you've got
Smoking Guns.
Smoking Guns, the Bushwhackers,
Men
Moe
on
and
a Mission.
Mabel, Men on a Mission.
Mhm.
Uh, I guess that's it. Oh, well done.
Yeah, I
So
mean Crush. Well, Crush was he was back on it because he was
yeah,
him and Yokozuna, but then Yokozuna was gone.
and
So
you
yeah,
also had some of these low card guys who were pretty new. So you
yeah,
don't know necessarily what's going to happen to them. I'm talking Aldo Montoya, Duke the Dumpster Drosy, Mantar, Quang. You had Doink the Clown, who was over as a solid mid card kind of
and he gets a
act.
strong reaction.
He does. And you had Crush, but even Bulldog, as good as Bulldog was and as fond as people were of him in this story with 1 and 2 going the whole way, if you look at the 30 and you say, before you know anything about the order or anything, if you look at the 30 names and you say, who has a legitimate chance of winning this? It's Sean and Luger.
That's it.
That's it, because you would not have put Bulldog on the list of likely winners. I mean, if you say pick the top five,
Right.
sure. But if you just say without prompting a number, who has a legitimate shot of winning this, you could still say it about Luger at this time. And you could say it about Sean. That was it. And that was a big problem. And there have been other
Mhm.
rumbles. It's not alone. There have been other rumbles where you had one or two guys that seemed like the only winners.
Mhm. And if I can
So,
hop in,
yeah,
one thing that hurts, Diesel being the champion actually hurts because they're not going to do Lex Luger versus Diesel, right? That doesn't
right.
that doesn't feel like the match. Um, they're not
Yeah,
going to
that
do
takes it away.
they're not going to do British Bull, and that's not me saying Diesel shouldn't have been but one of the downsides of Diesel being champion, and now your Royal Rumble winner getting a title match is who the winner is going to be. To your
Yeah,
point, I mean,
yeah,
what are you going to do? Henry Godwin,
right.
Rush? You don't even want to do that on TV, let alone wrestling. you know, and we weren't into fatal four ways or triple threats at this point, so that wasn't
No,
happening.
no.
Which is, I'm just pulling this right now. Maybe Bret being champion, okay, or even Lex Luger. Had you better use Lex Luger, talk about guys wasted. He's the third guy. Undertaker, Bret, and Lex Luger all, end up doing not much in 95. Maybe had Luger been your heel champion, had you turned him, right? Not necessarily with Ted DiBiase, but had he turned separately. Greg Parks and I talked about that. All
Well,
right.
he could have won here as a bit of a surprise because you
Right.
don't expect babyface. And he could have turned, Diesel could have come out with the title belt and said, I'll see you at WrestleMania. And you do a handshake, everyone gets excited, and Luger gives him a low blow. Bam.
Right. Right.
So you could have turned Luger at this point, even if he hadn't turned previously.
Right.
And you had that year of Luger promo. And you could feed into that to say he didn't think he could get it done. 94
Mhm.
was such a disappointing year for him that you could, that thing where heels justify their actions in a way that even you could kind of understand, even if you don't back them. That's always the best heel, right?
Correct.
You
Correct.
had that storyline. You could see why he might have done that, even if he doesn't turn that night, the next night on Raw or something where, he realizes he's got to get an edge back to him. Something was missing, and this is the year of Luger, and this is what I have to do.
Right.
You have a storyline there you could have told. I mean, you're not going to go away from the Sean uh, angle,
Well, you're not going to go away from
obviously.
the Sean D, but let me float this by you. Okay. And we got to get to the Rumble here because time is crunching. Let's not put the title on Diesel. Let's skip that. Let's move up Bret and Bob Backlund to the Royal Rumble. Okay. And let's keep the title on Backlund and let's put it on Bret. Let's have Lex Luger win the Rumble. Turn him heel. Do it before. And you have impetus for it. I was an All-American. I was this. I was that. You people didn't support me. Turn him heel. Diesel can now team with Lawrence Taylor. Instead of doing Lawrence Taylor against Bam Bam Bigelow, Team Diesel and LT against Shawn and Bam Bam Bigelow. Let that be the tag match. You could do Bret and Luger, and there's actually intrigue to Bret versus Luger for the title at WrestleMania. It's not
because
a slam
we
dunk
didn't get it the year before.
Right.
We could have gotten it the year before.
We could have gotten it the year before, but now this is a different Lex Luger.
Yeah.
Or keep Lex Luger and turn Bret heel. I mean, there's things you can do, but there's actual intrigue to that title match. You knew Diesel was beating Shawn, and you knew LT was beating Bam Bam Bigelow, which gave WrestleMania no intrigue whatsoever.
Right. Other than the spectacle of seeing LT. That was
right.
The whole reason to tune in. See Lawrence Taylor, all-time great NFL player in a wrestling ring. That was it.
Correct.
And see Steve Mongo McMichael in his corner, I believe, before he would become a WCW wrestler shortly thereafter. But
Correct.
yeah, I mean, it was and then to your earlier point, our earlier conversation, whether you go Luger heel or Bret heel, you have another strong heel in the year that was so lacking, regardless of what they do at WrestleMania and who wins.
Right. I mean, you go back and watch Luger's old heel work in WCW. It's very good.
Oh, sure.
I never bought that Luger was he a top line performer? No, but I mean, he was better than the way he was portrayed and the way people think. So it just gives you some options. All right, let's get to this Rumble here. Well, we basically talked about the most important parts, but just to run through it here. So Shawn Michaels and Bulldog are 1 and 2. Eli Blue, Duke the Dumpster Droese, Jimmy Del Rey, and then Sione are your first 6 entrances. Bulldog eliminates Jimmy Del Rey. Then you go Dr. Tom Pritchard. You go Doink the Clown. That gets a big reaction. You go Quang. And then Rick Martel, who really doesn't get any reaction because I think he's kind of out of place at this point. He hadn't been on TV much.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's kind of hard for him to really garner any reaction. Owen Hart comes out. This is a big you alluded to this. Bret attacks Owen from behind. So to continue the Bret Owen story. And then he's eliminated by British Bulldog, not on camera.
And that all made sense. It makes sense what they did from a storyline standpoint. But let's not forget, Owen was one of the biggest names in the Rumble. And he's in there for, a few seconds.
Right.
So that hurts the star power. And we'll say the same thing in advance of Backlund. Backlund was one of the bigger stars in the Rumble. And again, it makes sense. I get why they did it, but it does take away from the people actually competing in the match.
I think the idea was they wanted you focused on Bret attacking both guys. Okay. But then that signifies that Bret's turning heel. You know what I mean? It doesn't, it just basically sets up an I Quit match between Bret and Bob Backlund at WrestleMania.
Right.
And Owen goes on to work Yokozuna. So you really don't pay off what happens.
Right.
So, and by the way, we had 6 wrestlers work under a minute in this Rumble. Owen Hart and Bob Backlund being 2 of them. The rest, it really is not a big deal. Timothy Well, both Bushwhackers, and Jacob Blue. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was 89. What was the one that Luke got eliminated in like 2 seconds?
By the Barbarian, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
maybe
one
90 or 91.
I did 91 actually. Yeah. Because I did 89 and 90. I don't remember that.
Yeah, I don't think it was as early as 89. Yeah, 91 sounds right.
Right. All right. And then we just get a slew of eliminations. Duke Droese is eliminated by Shawn Michaels. Timothy Well is eliminated by the Bulldog. Martel is eliminated by Sione. Pritchard's eliminated by... It's just basically, we're getting eliminations with no flow, no nothing. Bushwhacker Luke comes out. Doink's eliminated by Quang. My notes on Quang is I think Savio Vega should have been in instead. What do you think?
I mean, he had a little bit better run, as I recall.
Yes, and for those not familiar, yes, Quang is the eventual Savio Vega. Quang is eliminated by Sione. Luke is quickly eliminated by Sean, and then Eli Blue and Sione eliminate each other. Then we get Jacob Blue, and he's quickly eliminated by Sean. So it's just dudes are just coming out and getting tossed. Nothing. I mean, the only story is really Sean and Bulldog. That's it. We then get King Kong Bundy. So now we think we're getting a little more juice. And then Mo comes out, and he's quickly tossed by Bundy. So, but then we get Mabel. And I thought of Biggie when he talked about meat slap meat. And they have a pretty cool exchange. You know? It's not bad. And then we get Bushwhacker Butch. Bundy is eliminated by Mabel. Butch is eliminated by Sean. So, John, what needs to be talked about with these first 18 entries? I don't think much.
No, I mean, it's the Bret Owen thing, the nice little moment with Mabel eliminating Bundy.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
There's really nothing else to talk. And the fact that the 1 and 2 were still in it at this point.
And you think typically they start getting WrestleMania ready at the Rumble, and you start seeing some of these things happen in the Royal Rumble match itself. Nothing set up, nothing. I mean, Lex Luger's next, all right, and he eliminates Mabel. I mean, Luger and the British Bulldog are working the Blue Brothers at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
I mean, Yeah.
I was going to ask because I have no recollection of what Luger did. I mean, I remember him teaming with Bulldog, but I would never have known that that's what was his WrestleMania match after all.
Might have even been the opener. I was just looking this up earlier. Because why not? Why wouldn't you look up WrestleMania 11? We're gonna cover it in a few months. I don't know, John. We might have to go with a different plan. We'll see. Okay, at least it's an April pay-per-view, so we got a few months. We can figure.
There you go.
Yeah, they open. They open against the Blue Brothers.
Yeah.
Yep. Razor. I mean, Razor faces Jarrett. I mean, so that was kind of set up, but not in the Rumble match.
No.
Taker and Bundy. That's set up. Owen and Yokozuna against the Smoking Guns. I mean. Let's see here. We get Billy and Bart back to back, but I mean, Owen's already gone, so that's nothing there.
No.
I mean, Bret Hart and Bob Backlund, I guess that's set up here.
Yeah, really, it's the 3 big ones, and the LT one was on the show, but not in the actual Rumble match. Yeah.
All right, so then we get Mantar. We get Aldo Montoya. I'm just going to list the next batch until we get an elimination. So we got Mantar, Aldo Montoya, Henry Godwin, Billy Gunn, Bart Gunn, Bob Backlund, who gets attacked by Bret Hart. And he gets a lot of heat, Backlund, and Bret attacking him gets some pretty good heat as well. And then speaking of we get Stephen Dunn, and Backlund is eliminated by Lex Luger.
Yep, those things all happened.
It's like, yeah, I there was like no notes that there was like nothing going on. I mean, Sean Radican and I did the 90 Rumble, and we kept stopping because there was talking points, there were things going on. There was stories being told. With various parts of that match. We then get Dick Murdoch as your token, veteran, I guess. No reaction. I don't think a 95 crowd really cares about Dick Murdoch.
Who would have even recognized him?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know. Did they announce the names as they came in?
I don't think
they do.
No.
Do they? And they don't do entrance music back then for the people.
No,
right? Except for the first 2?
I want to say 96 is the first year, because I know Jake returns and he gets his music played.
I mean, that would help some, not for Dick Murdoch, obviously, but I mean, some of these guys coming out where you're just like, wait, who is that? Oh, okay. Because the entrance music has that connection.
Yes.
Especially for the live crowd who maybe aren't seeing it on the big screen, and you're just like, who is that person? Oh, that's Bart Gunn, or
Yeah.
whatever. But it's like, yeah, the presentation, and then again, that 60 seconds, it's too quick, and you don't have time to create talking points.
Yeah. We then get Adam Bomb, and I noted I think 3.5 people cheered.
I'm gonna say he got better reaction than most of the people.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
but
That's the
not
bar is
that
pretty
doesn't
low.
mean, yeah, exactly.
Number 29 is Fatu. And then we get Mantar eliminated by Lex Luger. Number 30 is Crush. Then we start cleaning up a little bit. Both of the Smoking Guns are eliminated by Crush and Dick Murdoch. Stephen Dunn is eliminated by Aldo Montoya. Dick Murdoch is trying to headbutt Fatu. I mean, that was actually kind of funny.
That was funny.
Crush starts cleaning up. Adam Bomb goes. Aldo Montoya goes. Fatu goes. I mean, I guess Crush was a little bit of a threat around this time. Maybe kind of, sort of, a little
Well,
bit.
here's the deal. I'm just looking. He eliminates 5 guys, which is
Yeah.
the second most in this Rumble after Shawn. He was
Yeah.
number 30. You could have used this as a catapult for him in a way, and my recollection is nothing came out of it. So you wasted opportunity.
Yeah, Crush. Yeah. I mean,
I mean,
he's
not that
just.
I'm like crying over Crush not getting the big push, but
No,
he had
no.
something. You could have done something with him. Why put him in number 30 and have him eliminate 5 guys if you're not going to do anything with him afterwards?
Right.
You know.
Right. Yeah. And then let's see. Oh, and here's actually a talking point. Luger saves Michaels from being eliminated by Dick Murdoch.
Hmm.
And then nothing comes of it. I mean, Michaels goes after Luger, which is fine. I mean, it's every man for himself, but why is he bailing out
And Lawler
Shawn?
talked about it a lot on commentary. He said it
Yeah,
doesn't make any sense. Why would he do that? And at some point, and didn't he do it twice? I was thinking he did it twice.
he might have done it twice. If he did it twice, I missed it, but I know he saved them once.
Yeah, I think the one you mentioned was the second time. And at one point, Lawler said it doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? And McMahon, excused it by saying, well, he doesn't see Shawn as much of a threat as whoever he was, was like Crush or whoever, because Crush is so much bigger. He
Yeah.
sees him as a more of a threat. And it was kind of like, okay, but there's also the Rumble match itself is my favorite. I love it. But how many times each year does somebody have a guy gorilla pressed over his head and you
Oh,
could
I'm glad you
walk
brought that up.
2 steps and throw him over the top rope, and instead, yeah, just dump him down in the ring? It happens. It happened. Bulldog did it right at the beginning of the match, and it
That's it.
happened later on too with
Yep.
Luger, I think.
Yep.
And you're just like, man, why are you so stupid? Don't, that kind of stuff always, even back then as a 15-year-old, watching live, I know I was probably yelling at the TV, why are you so stupid?
Right.
It doesn't
Right.
make sense. Luger saving Shawn didn't make sense. There was no storyline reason for it, and then again, nothing came out of it. So why are
Right.
you doing it? So yeah, that there was a lot of head scratching. There was another thing, maybe you remember who it was. I want to say it was like somebody like Duke Drosy or somebody, maybe Adam Bomb, did the skin the cat thing earlier in the match. There were two of them fighting, and one of them was trying to eliminate, the heel was trying to eliminate the baby face,
Okay.
and the baby face went over, hung on, didn't, and pulled himself back in. He didn't skin the cat, excuse me. He held on to the top rope and then got up on the apron and pulled himself back in. And God, I can't remember who it was. And the heel toppled over and eliminated. And they was like, wow, that was a really great move by whoever to hang on there and not get eliminated. God, who was it?
Was it Drosy? Because he was eliminated by Michaels earlier. Not sure. I'd have to go.
It wasn't Drosy. No. Anyways, it doesn't matter. It happened though, trust me.
I believe you.
And I remember not obviously 30 years ago, but rewatching it, knowing the ending, I was like, why are they doing that spot? Which is so similar to how this match is going to end with Shawn
Right.
hanging on. So that one spot just kind of popped into my head as I was watching. I'm a little curious, how much control they have when they plan these out. Who's making all the decisions? Who
Was
eliminates
it the
who?
Bundy elimination? Because Bundy took a little while to get eliminated.
No, no,
Okay.
it was later in the match.
Okay.
Let's see.
Was it Mantar? Was it I'll think of the heel. Was it a heel that got eliminated?
It was the heel got eliminated,
So it's
and it
got to be
was a baby
Backlund,
face.
Mantar,
Um,
or maybe it was Murdoch.
oh, it was Godwin.
Yeah, no, what's up?
It was Henry O. Godwin.
Yes, yes, yes. He was eliminated by Luger. Yes.
But it was
like
before that. It was Dick Murdoch was eliminating Godwin,
bingo. Yes.
and Godwin hung on. I knew it was some lower card guy. Godwin hang on. Murdoch hit the ground, and Godwin pulled himself back in to be eliminated, a little while later. But
Murdoch was giving him an airplane spin, and then like Luger ran into him, and then Godwin got eliminated.
Yeah. But the holding on thing, yeah. And I was like, man, that's a really nice, it's a nice spot for Godwin, but why are you giving that spot to Godwin when it's going to parallel Michaels doing it later? And in the long run, who really cares? It doesn't matter. Nobody really thinks about these things except for me when I watch again 30 years later. But I thought that was a little curious. That's all.
Your final four, and maybe this is why, because it's basically when they do something like that, giving somebody multiple eliminations. I mean, Crush isn't going to win anything. He's not going to win any titles. So that's kind of his claim to fame. It's not like the Diesel push that started in 94 and then propelled him to 3 titles. Right. Kane gets that later on in 2001, so it's really just to give Crush something. And he's a final four in this Rumble, which, I mean, if you look at the field, you probably could have predicted that from the beginning.
Yeah. Throw an Owen maybe instead, but yeah.
Yeah. Luger gets eliminated by Michaels as he was working Crush in the corner. So it really didn't fit with what they did earlier. It didn't make sense.
And getting Luger out before that, he's final four, but again, he was one of the potential winners over a Crush. So that takes away at the very end a little bit of that mystery. Not that there was a lot, but
if you see Luger walk out, I'm sorry. This was his epitaph. This was his death knell. This was it.
Yeah.
What's he doing moving forward?
Yeah. He would be better off for it in the long run, though, going back to WCW where he had, a nice run and some big moments.
And I will say he's one of those guys, had you used him a little better and got rid of the All-American gimmick, make him a heel, make him the total package, let him be the total package, and let him be what he was in the late 80s, working with Ric Flair and Sting and whatnot. It could have given you so much depth. It could have changed everything. And maybe 95 is a 95 is a better. Derek in the chat, as a kid, I was into the Luger and Bulldog tag. I mean, listen, as a tag team, they made logistical sense at the time. Like, if you weren't going to do anything with Luger as a singles or Bulldog, they made some sense together.
Well, and I liked it at the time too, because I liked Bulldog. I wasn't ever a huge Luger fan, but I liked him enough.
Right.
And I was always a Bulldog fan. So I was into the team. It didn't go anywhere. It didn't, it didn't last long. And if Luger had stayed and they had played it out, you could potentially see them breaking up down the line and having that Luger, a Luger Bulldog feud leading to Luger getting a run as a heel at that point. Right. Who knows what the long term,
And Derek says the problem with Luger is motivation. Once the motivation was gone, Luger was an anchor in each promotion he was in, WWF and then WCW. I mean, that's fair. I mean, he looked clocked out. Like when he walked out of that room, like I said, he was just like, when can I go back to when can I leave? When can I
where do I get my? Let me pick up my paycheck and
yeah.
get out of here.
He got the massive push, Derek says. He did not have the desire to take it to the next level. I think it was more his gimmick. He just did not want to do Made in the USA. It did not suit him at all. No. I mean, he
was jerked around a little bit by the company.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know all the backstage things that were going into the
he did it to himself too. He did it to himself too. I mean, there's both, but I mean,
well, and you had the whole steroid trial going on, which clearly affected how they wanted to they wanted to push.
Yeah.
If that's not going on, McMahon is probably putting the title on Luger at SummerSlam, but he's going to pivot. So there's a lot of circumstances. Luger played his role, in some of the, he's not blameless necessarily, but there's a lot going on and why they ultimately choose Bret over Luger, but you can't blame Luger for being kind of checked out, I think.
I don't blame him either. And we'll revisit that when we kind of put a bow on his career in WWF later in the year.
And then you'll revisit his career in WCW. As you go on,
exactly, when he shows up on Nitro. All right, to wrap this up here, Crush was eliminated by the British Bulldog. Crush and Shawn Michaels were actually working together, but then Crush turned on him. He gets eliminated, and then we already talked about Michaels and Bulldog. We talked about the finish. Michaels, they show later on. They show him swinging his leg, and that, not for nothing, that's impressive because that's core strength. That's a lot of core strength.
After 38 minutes, too.
Yeah. I mean because he's got to his leg is swinging. He's got to use his core to swing that leg up
in both directions.
It was impressive.
And it went in. I mean, having seen that replay how many times, they don't necessarily show the whole thing every time they show the replay. It was longer than I remember, to be honest. I was amazed at how long that lasted.
Yeah.
So that was very impressive. And to your point earlier, we had talked a while back as you started your rewatch a little bit ahead of me. But I had fond memories. This was always one of my favorite Rumbles. And then you rewatch it and you're like, why was this one? Well, that's why. I was a huge Michaels fan. I liked Bulldog. I liked the idea of 1 and 2 going the whole way.
And that was the point. And I think that was the whole point of this Rumble. I think that's why. Was that why they did it for 60-second entrances? I don't think so. But I think a combination of the star power that was in it and what they were doing for a finish, I think that was the whole point, because that's what they wanted you to think about with this.
And how influential was that spot? Because I know it's different, but John Morrison, Kofi Kingston.
Yeah. Naomi did it once.
Naomi, Kaden Carter, but it's her Katana Chance.
Casey Catanzaro.
Katana Chance has done it, and it was cool at first. It has gotten ridiculous, and I think, to their credit, I think maybe a few years they've kind of gone away from it. Kofi crashed and burned on a few recent attempts.
God, who's next to do it?
Morrison, started it.
I swear to God, if Penta starts doing that, I'm going to be so pissed. If they start doing that,
can do that. Let's see when Ray Phoenix gets here.
that makes more sense. There you go. That makes that always.
And you also had in a slightly different way, right? You had Mandy Rose being caught by Otis.
Yeah.
And that all stems from this one spot where they really emphasized both feet must touch the ground.
Exactly.
And it was a great moment. And again, a lot of those, I enjoyed a lot of what they've done with
Yep.
those,
And Derek agrees with you that
yeah.
a lot was influenced by this.
And there have
John,
been
I
some
do
other
have to.
similar times too, not with the both feet touch the floor, but just the skinning the cat and
Yeah,
some of those moments where somebody you think got eliminated comes back in. They did it with frickin' Santino Marella. It's a different case, but you know what I'm saying.
right,
You think
right.
he's eliminated, you think he's gonna sneak in and throw the Mexican guy who won the Royal Rumble. I can't think of his
Rey
name.
Mysterio.
No, no, no.
Oh,
The
Alberto Del Rio.
Del Rio. I'm like
Yeah,
the jerk, the guy,
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
guy. That Rumble. You think, oh my God, Santino's gonna. That even stems from this. It's a different type of thing, but it's the
Yeah,
idea of the person who thinks they won raising their hand and either getting eliminated or in that case almost getting eliminated by someone. It was an incredibly influential spot and huge for Shawn Michaels' career. He didn't win the title, but he's back a year later, winning the
right.
Rumble again. Um, so there's a lot of negative things, the pace and everything else we've talked about. But the ending has stood the test of time in so many ways that you have to consider it one of the biggest moments, at
Yeah,
least, in Royal Rumble history.
absolutely. All right, John, I do have to run, but let's give this show a thumbs up, thumbs down, or a thumbs in the middle. It's a tough one
It's a tough one.
because it's got good matches. The Rumble's not so good, but it has the finish. You know what? I'm
Yeah,
gonna make it easy on you. I'm gonna go slight thumbs up.
yeah, I'm in that middle to slight thumbs up. Again, you have the moments, the LT moment. You have, some pretty good action in some of the undercard matches, not all of them.
Right.
And the coast to coast. I like the coast to coast. I have a soft spot for the coast to coast, the double coast to coast.
Yeah.
Uh, I have a soft spot for that in my
They
heart. So
they
I can't
worked
go
well
thumbs
with what
down.
they worked well with what they had. They worked with what they had. At least they gave you a good undercard. The Rumble stinks, but at least you have that moment. And Cody Rhodes has talked about that finish being what his favorite finish.
Yep.
He actually loves that finish.
Yep.
So, John, before we go, plug your socials and what you're doing for the Torch these days.
So yeah, I'm doing the raw hits and misses for the Torch and enjoying the Netflix era so far. It's been
Yes,
pretty good. I've been relieved. I mean, 2.5 hours is still longer than it should be, but I've been relieved at 2.5 instead of 3 hours. And I've been watching it on delay on Netflix, and they fast forward through the commercials for me. I love that. And so
Tuesday
I'm
Raw for me, baby.
so, I've been doing it that night because I'm on the West Coast, so I can start it at like 9 o'clock and be done by like 11, whatever. I like the timing. But anyways, look for my raw hits and misses. Usually comes out, Tuesday afternoon or Wednesday morning. Because of this, it'll probably be more Wednesday morning than Tuesday this
There you
week.
go.
I'll see if I get to it today or not, but certainly tomorrow. And that's just basically here's what I like, it's a hit. Here's what I don't like, it's a miss. I am no longer on Twitter X, but I am on the newer Blue Sky. I like to call it Blue Ski. And you can find me there at John Mezzera because I'm not clever enough to come up with anything other than my name. And so you can follow me and interact. I miss some of the old Twitter people, some of my I call them my ex friends that
I like it.
that have not switched over to Blue Sky or added Blue Sky. I miss some of those conversations. So I'm always hoping some of those guys will join up at some point and we can get back to some of those fun online talks. But that is my social. That is my torch job for countless years now.
Yep, it's must-read stuff. I hope everybody's
Thank you.
checking it out. And John, you will be brave to be back here in a couple of months for WrestleMania 11. So
I
gear up.
will look forward to it because I'll tell the story at that point, but I had some technical issues with that one. So
Uh-oh.
I've always had some mixed feelings about that show, and I really am curious, in all honesty, to revisit it
Yeah.
because with fresh eyes and not being an angry teenager yelling at his cable company.
There you go. All right. As far as my socials, you could find me. I'm still on X at Frank Peteani. That's at Frank Peteani. Same thing with Facebook and Instagram. On Blue Sky, it's my name and then just put a 73 at the end. So at Frank Peteani 73. I don't post much, if at all, anymore, but I will respond to you if you message me. And currently, this is my torch assignment. I'm trying to get back in on the post-show rotation with Wade. If I could do it on a semi-regular basis, so I'll put out when I do that. And I want to thank everybody that was in the chat. Derek, Azan, Justin, appreciate your comments. Dr. Ross as well. Hope you guys join us next time. And I want to thank all the listeners afterwards on the VIP side for listening to the audio, or if you're listening to it via YouTube afterwards on demand, you could do that. So for John Mezzera, I am Frank Peteani, signing off and reminding you, when you are looking for nostalgia, you have come to the right place, where we talk pro wrestling then and now.